Jay, I would have printed it out to pass that on.
Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the August 14th Planning Board meeting. It is also Indigenous Peoples Day, so happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And if we could have a moment of silence. All right. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Diane, do we have any items of information today?
I do. So the final draft of the Western Big Branch Area Plan encompassing portions of the Friendship and New Hill communities is now available for review on the town's website. And we have scheduled the public hearings, and I wanted to highlight the dates because both of these were impacted by holidays. So the November Planning Board meeting will be on Monday, November 4th, which is a week early because of Veterans Holiday, here in the council chamber at 4:30. And then town council's public hearing will be on Thursday, November 21st, which is the Thursday prior to Thanksgiving, at 6 p.m. And then following the adoption of the plan, there'll be subsequent amendments to the 2045 land use map and 2045 transportation plan map. That's all.
Thank you. All right. So we will move to public comment. The purpose of public comment is to allow the public to speak on an item that does not appear in this agenda under public hearings. Any member of the public wishing to comment at public hearings should wait to be called at that time. If you'd like the opportunity to speak now during the public comment period, please feel free to sign up and come up. Do we have anybody signed up? No. Okay, very good. All right, I will close public comment. And we will move to the consent agenda. Item number 1 is minutes from the September 9th regular meeting. Assuming everyone had an opportunity to take a look at that. Any questions or a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. A motion and a second?
A second.
Okay.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that minutes are approved from the September 9th meeting. Now we're going to move on to public hearings. We are doing something a little different with public hearings from here moving forward. We have the items, thank you. In an effort to streamline our public hearings and to have some equity between applicants and the community, we are going to have staff present as they always do. And then folks wishing to sign up, the applicant wishing to sign up has signed up. If you have not signed up, please do in the public comment, in the public hearing section. You'll have that opportunity. If you have a group of folks with you, you will have 9 minutes to speak. The idea is that staff normally presents a pretty thorough information on of the application that has been submitted, highlights neighbor comment as well as staff recommendations. Really want the applicant to come forward and list any comments that they have that they specifically want to highlight. Once we have taken all the comments from public hearing, it'll come back to the board for discussion. If any questions come up that either staff or the applicant is able to answer during that discussion period, that's when we'll hold that. Again, the idea is to streamline that process, to not have duplicative information, but to still offer an opportunity for both applicant and community to engage. With that, Joshua, I'm going to hand it to you for the public hearing on case 242Z14 Broadstone PUD Amendment.
Alrighty. I'm here to present rezoning case 24CZ14, Broadstone PUD Amendment. The property under consideration for this rezoning is central to town, located just within the Apex Peakway along South Hugh Street. The area of the parcel is approximately 5.84 acres and is currently vacant with pockets of trees dotting the property. The property is currently zoned Planned Unit Development Conditional Zoning. All of the land contiguous to this parcel are a part of the same overall PUD of Broadstone Station, or Broadstone PUD, as the amendments may have called it. So all of the surrounding properties are Planned Unit Development. To the north across South Hugh Street, we have Cambridge Village Apartments. To the east across the Apex Peakway is Murphy Gas Station and Walmart. To the west is Stone Glen Apartments, and to the south is a continuation of the Stone Glen Apartments property and the Apex Peakway. The proposed zoning would revise a few of the conditions from Planned Unit Development Conditional Zoning District as approved in rezoning case 19CZ03, which currently only allows the uses within the retail classification. The 2045 land use map identifies the area as mixed use, medium density residential, high density residential, office employment, and commercial services. The proposed uses in this rezoning are consistent with the land use classifications. The applicant conducted 2 neighborhood meetings, the first on June 27th and the second on September 19th, 2024, and those reports are in your agenda packet. This rezoning case was exempt from meeting with the Environmental Advisory Board per the UDO, as this rezoning does not impact or revise any buffers or other environmental conditions related to this overall development. So rezoning case 19CZ03 provided that this section of the parcel as shown on this layout as retail. The primary intent of this rezoning is to allow the use hotel or motel on this property, which would be a non-residential use, not necessarily a retail use, as all of the uses within the subheading retail sales and services of this list would be the only retail uses that would be allowed on this site. So this basically the gist of this rezoning case is to add more non-residential uses to help bolster the primary use of hotel motel on this site. So as you can see here, these are uses that were allowed under the in non-residential districts on the rezoning case 10CZ10 Broadstone PUD Amendment that are now being proposed for this property alone. And these are the uses within the non-residential areas that are being removed from that list, so they will not be allowed on this parcel. I'll let you guys kind of look that over, see which ones were removed. The reason for most of these removals was staff and the applicant believed that some of these wouldn't really work with transportation commitments that were already provided on these parcels, and just the intensity with the area and what's already been developed surrounding this parcel. There are some additional zoning conditions being added to this planned unit development. The first is related to the use restaurant drive-through. As you can see here, a restaurant drive-through use within a multi-tenant building will basically be limited to within 200 feet of the existing right-of-way, and a standalone unit would be allowed within 375 feet of the existing right-of-way. This is a sketch of the yellow area is the 200 feet from the existing right-of-way, roughly. So no drive-through at all, any type would be allowed in that yellow portion. The blue portion would be within a multi-tenant building, and then the rest of the development to the south on this parcel could have a standalone unit of restaurant drive-through. There are two transportation conditions being provided with this. The first one is that vehicular access will be through the Stone Glen Apartments property as provided in rezoning 19 CZ 03 via Emerald Pines Avenue, which accesses the Peakway, and Amethyst Crest Way, which would connect to South Hughes Street. And then the second is additional South Hughes Street improvements, which will widen the South Hughes Street section in front of this property to a minimum 41-foot curb and gutter section, and provide that the applicant will develop the side path along that South Hughes frontage to connect what's already been provided with Stone Glen Apartments and what's already along the Apex Peakway along this property. And planning recommends approval of rezoning case 24CZ14 with the applicants with the conditions as offered by the applicant.
Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you.
Any questions for Joshua? I have a question.
Okay.
As I was reading this over the weekend and looking at looking at the drive-through, I want to just confirm that it is restaurant drive-through, like as in a fast food restaurant drive-through, and not drive-through as in, I know oftentimes if you're pulling into a hotel, you'll drive, pause, go check in. Some might consider that a drive-through. So I want to make sure it was specifically restaurant drive-through, not
Yes.
drive-through. And then, okay, thank you for that clarification. And then the standalone restaurants, would this restrict a restaurant from being on site, or would it just restrict the location of where it is on site, or is that only matter if it is a standalone restaurant?
So the condition as written would only address restaurants with the drive-through. So a restaurant, say a Chipotle that doesn't have a drive-through, would be able to be with anywhere on this property. If it had a drive-through like Starbucks or McDonald's, that's where that would come into play.
Thank you for that.
Just for educational purposes, what is the purpose of that setback? Is it to mitigate traffic or?
It's to pull away the vehicular use from that corner, as we currently have nothing really on that corner except for the Chick-fil-A drive-through is going to be tucked on this parcel over here, right along this buffer. So just to kind of pull those, heavier car uses from the corner and bringing it more into the parcel.
Questions for Joshua?
Are there any height limitations for if you're using hotel use?
There are no zoning conditions within this PUD limiting height. There may have been some in the original rezoning, but that would be something that's not sure if. Yeah, I think Amanda's gonna look it up for us.
If you're looking at a hotel and you have unlimited height and right up next to a neighborhood,
Yeah.
very kind of incompatible.
The maximum height for the use hotel in the current PUD is 6 stories. However, this site's going to be limited by the parking. That's usually, what's going to limit the height, and also just the demand for, typically we're seeing, that 4 to 5 story range. The apartments next door are 3 stories. 3-story apartments, I believe, with pitched roofs. So.
Do we have a general idea of the number of spaces that would be available with the footprint? I guess this could be more of an applicant question. Maybe I'll just hold that.
Okay.
All right, if there is no additional questions for Joshua, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing section, and we have Mr. Carpenter, Mr. Roach, y'all work with me. Durham? Did I say that right? Did I get it right? Who is speaking on behalf, and there's the only folks that have signed up, so that's just the applicant.
Jeff and Lyle are just on there for questions.
Awesome, got it, thank you. So you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Matthew Carpenter with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street. As Joshua explained, the purpose of the amendment is to allow the development of a hotel and some retail commercial outparcels. To give you just a little more context about the way the PUD has progressed over the years, I believe it was originally approved, the overall PUD, in 2007 or around that time, and then it's been amended at least twice since then, in 2010 and 2019. The 19 amendment was the most recent, and it was brought by DHIC for the Stone Glen Apartments. And so the commercial designation was actually on their property before they brought the amendment, and it was hotel, office, retail was how it was written on the plan. And so then when they moved that designation off of their property to develop the affordable housing project, they moved it onto this property, but dropped the first 2 labels, so it just said retail. But then the hotel is still a permitted use in the PUD documents, and so we initially had some confusion about whether hotel was permitted or not. We thought it would be cleaner just to go ahead and bring the PUD amendment to make it clear that it's permitted and get that cleaned up. But as we've gone through that process, it also allowed us, I think, to improve the zoning here. Right now, it's just a general retail designation, which allows that long list of uses that Joshua mentioned. And so in working with staff identified several uses that we think don't make sense here, so we've excluded those. And then the second thing that we done was to respond to the concerns about the drive-through, and I think those are mostly related to the Chick-fil-A that's going on the northeastern corner there of the intersection. I believe, if I remember their site plan correctly, their drive aisle goes around, right around the intersection, and so when you drive through, it'll be a very car-oriented sort of landscape when you drive through, and the goal was not to have that on our site as well. And so to push drive-throughs down to the southern portion of our site, we did want to leave the ability for like a multi-tenant drive-through a little bit closer to the intersection. That's, again, things like Starbucks or Dunkin', and it's a little less intense and a smaller drive-through, not like the NASCAR Chick-fil-A drive-throughs. And so those are the main improvements we've been able to make. With those changes and the permitted uses, the request is consistent with the land use map, which targets this as a mixed use area. And so for that reason, we respectfully request your recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there's no one else to speak on this item, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion and possible motion. And again, we can use this opportunity to bring Joshua or the applicant, so staff or the applicant, back for additional questions.
I'll resume my question if that's okay. I'm not sure whoever from staff, whoever from the applicants would like to speak. So my question is, what is obviously we don't have a direct answer right now, but there's limitations like staff has presented, limitations on parking, so that's going to limit the height, but what are we realistically looking at if we're doing a hotel there?
Right, so Jeff Roach, Peak Engineering and Design. Appreciate you guys letting me come up and talk. I was itching to get up here. I'm just kidding, by the way. We're still working with the applicant, but they're doing another hotel over in McGregor Village right now. Generally, this one's going to be about the same size. There will be some space along the Peakway that could be restaurant space, and so as you guys know, as the hotel gets kind of settled in, that decides how much land is left for the office space or restaurant space, what goes in there. This will be all surface parking, so it's kind of a fine dance between what's the right number of parking spaces, right square foot in the building. I don't see us going all the way to 6 stories. I think the one at McGregor is 5. This one's probably going to be 107 room hotel. So I think of the Candlewood Suites that's directly across. It's generally the same size. I actually think the developer that's doing this one, I think may have done that one a couple years back. So it's serving that need here. They see the need for it. And agreed to go ahead and make the commitments that staff asked for, removing some of the uses and drive-through conditions. So anyway, does that answer your question?
It does.
Kind of a still kind
Sure,
of.
well, we know it's,
fluid.
like you said, it's gonna be a design thing. I mean, it's, obviously you're not gonna build, so high if you can't support it with the number of parking spaces.
That's right. Well, staff won't let us either, so.
That'd be silly, right? So-
All right.
Additional questions? Or possible motion?
I will make a motion to approve the proposed rezoning of 24CZ 14 Broadstone Pot Amendment.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? All right, that measure passes unanimously. On to item number 2, public hearing and possible motion regarding the 2024 Wake County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan update. Shelley, that was
I
a mouthful.
promise we didn't make it a tongue twister on purpose.
I appreciate that. Also, it is 2024. You think I would know about 10 months in?
It happens. So this next project is kind of similar to a lot of our other long-range projects that you guys have looked at. This is more of an update. However, just as some kind of real brief background on what hazard mitigation planning is, it's a process where we go through and we look at the types of risks and vulnerabilities that are associated with natural disasters, look at what we have in our area. For instance, we don't live on top of limestone caves, so we don't have as much of a problem with sinkholes as my hometown in Knoxville does. So we don't really worry about those here. We do, however, have lots of really big creeks that flood when we get a lot of rain. So we look more at that kind of thing. And we look at those risks and vulnerabilities to try to develop long-term strategies to help protect people and their property from any future hazard events. The intent is to reduce the impact where we can, if we can't outright prevent it entirely. So to make it less expensive to recover from, hopefully not have to recover when we're doing our jobs right and we have the best foresight, but sometimes things happen. In 2000, the federal Congress passed the Disaster Mitigation Act, and that requires state and local governments to develop hazard mitigation plans in order to qualify for federal grant assistance. So for example, and this is one that sits a little close to home, in western North Carolina, the states and counties, or the counties and municipalities that had approved hazard mitigation plans when all the water from the most recent hurricane got dumped on them, they will qualify for grant money from FEMA and from the federal government in order to help them rebuild. If they didn't have one of these plans, then they would not qualify for that money. So it's very important. There are other ways to finance things, and the state does a really good job of working with different counties and municipalities, and they do a ton of outreach, so I'm not actually that worried about it here in North Carolina. But that's just one thing to keep in mind, is if your plan lapses, then you no longer qualify for those funds. So it's one of the reasons why the town staff does a really hard push to make sure that we get our new one set up and done and approved in time. Just to give you an idea of some of the hazards that we look at, these are the hazards that are actually looked at in the plan. Like I said, there are some types of natural hazards that we don't incorporate in our plan just because they simply aren't going to happen here. So sandstorms, not really an issue for North Carolina, just as an example. And then here's some other. This year they decided to break out thunderstorms into lightning, winds, and hail. So just to give you an idea. We also have 3 new ones on here that we did not use, or we did not cover in the 2019 version. Those are the bottom 3 on here, which is radiological emergency, cyber threat, and terrorism. Those were not required to be incorporated in the last version by FEMA because they were considered man-made hazards, and I don't understand why, but at the time we were not required to go over them. Now we're using them in there, and there is coverage within the plan at this point. As a part of this, we also went through and did a risk assessment, and the 3 riskiest and most intense hazards that we will face are high heat. I know everybody felt that this summer. Winter storms. We don't get them every year, but when we do, we get a lot of ice a lot of times, and this area doesn't normally get cold weather, so it actually hits us harder when we do get it than, say, somebody from Pennsylvania. And thunderstorm winds. So the winds in particular from thunderstorms, as we all know, those can knock a bunch of stuff over. So federal law requires that hazard mitigation plans be adopted and updated every 5 years. In 2014, Wake County and the municipalities within it pooled their resources to develop the first multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. The idea was that we could all come together, learn from each other, look at where our plans overlap or where we maybe need to overlap some more, and pool resources to make it as fiscally responsible to come up with one of these as we could for everybody. And then in 2019, we redid it, we updated it again, and Apex adopted the 2020 through 2025 multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. Since January of this year, town staff has been working with a consultant and the other municipalities on a revised plan, and that's because in January 2025, so 3 months from now, the plan will expire. The currently adopted plan will expire. As of right now, I think next week, Wake County is supposed to take this to the Board of Commissioners and get it adopted first. And with all of the towns signing on to it, it becomes viable with the first adoption. So we will have made sure that we aren't missing our window. So this is a big deal, and it's definitely a group process. It's a team result. I'm standing here in front of you, but I am by far and away not the only person who works on this thing. This is the list of all of our departments and all of our committee representatives. We had a meeting on February 12th this year where we went over everything that we do, and then I also had individual follow-up meetings with most of the departments listed on here. So, I got ahead of myself. So the action plan is kind of the meat and potatoes of, and kind of the core of the hazard mitigation plan. Most of the pages in the document are actually taken up with the analysis and the breakdown of how we got to things, but the action plan is what we're going to do, or what we are doing at the moment. They're the actual steps that we are taking to develop new capacity or start new programs in order, or build new structures in order to prevent hazards and mitigate their impact on the town in general. So one of the first steps that we do is we go through and we mark off what have we finished for the year or for the last 5 years. We normally come through and do an update once every year. So this has some stuff that you haven't seen in a couple of years, but not stuff that's been on there for a really long time. The fire department finished Public Safety Station 6. That's a big deal. It dramatically reduced response times for the homes and businesses in that area. They also created what's called a situational awareness dashboard in the Emergency Ops Center. This basically means that they're it's where they report back in and they can keep track of what's going on a variety of different aspects of a response, and they can keep an eye, they can much more quickly relay people out to do certain things, accomplish certain tasks, that kind of thing. Planning also has updated several things in the UDO and the Design and Development Manual. One of those was proper species selection and practices for planting and maintenance in the landscape ordinance. This is a big deal because we don't really want trees knocking over power lines if we can avoid them. We also don't want floods causing trees to fall and rip out water and sewer lines. Nobody is a fan of not having water or being able to use the bathroom when it's dangerous outside. And nobody wants to clean it up or have to deal with the potential for illness if there's a problem there. In addition, we added separation standards between daycares and hazardous uses. That's just to make sure that if something happens at, say, an industrial site, that the smallest and most vulnerable among us are not likely to take the brunt of that. And we also added separation standards for the use gas and fuel wholesale. This isn't one that we see very often, but it does mean that there's larger quantities of combustible materials around. So now we have to take more things into consideration if a new one wants to locate or an existing one wants to relocate. In addition, the Water Resources Department implemented their stormwater utility fee and program, and this is going to be a big deal. It's going to really help us make sure that we can maintain all of the stormwater infrastructure that we have in town and make sure that that stays up to date and cleaned out and capable of handling as much of that rainfall that we get as possible. We added the next step when we do this meeting is to add new action items. So I've got a list of some of those in here for you. The electric department plans to upgrade the East William Street substation with 2 new very large power transformers. And they plan to construct new feeder lines in order to be able to move electricity between substations in different parts of town better. So that if one area goes down, they can reroute power back out and it stays as more of a web instead of a single direction situation. The fire department is planning to renovate Fire Station 3 and construct a new public safety station number 8. IT is working with fire and police on a camera project downtown and on town campus that'll let us keep track of what's going on all year round, but also particularly when we have the large festivals that we like to have so that we can get responders out there faster. The Parks Department has added the Big Branch Greenway onto the plan, and then as well as adding the Reedy Branch Greenway section from Abington to Goliath Lane and Middle Creek Greenway from Gladstone North to Center Street. All of these, the greenways are actually extremely helpful because we have to think not only of very large scale disasters, but also really small ones too. Things where you have to evacuate everybody within, say, half a mile, but you're not worried about the entire town being demolished. So a good one is, for example, thinking about a ruptured gas line. A few years ago in Durham, there was some construction that went on, and downtown they had a ruptured gas line that just sparked like that, and they had to evacuate a bunch of people. But they didn't have to evacuate an entire, like a huge section. So having greenways provides us with multiple additional routes away for, say, a shorter period of time, particularly when they connect to subdivisions and things. It allows more pedestrians to get away if the roads are clogged, those kinds of things. Let you get on your bike and maybe bike up to a friend's house a quarter mile away or half mile away and hang out with them for a little while. In addition, the police department is planning to add on and renovate to get some more office space so that they can respond better as well. Transportation and Infrastructure is planning to add something called a GPS emergency vehicle preemption. Basically, this means that emergency vehicles will have a switch on their vehicles to allow them to interrupt normal traffic flow and normal traffic signal timing during an emergency. So if they need to get somebody through that light right now, they can push that button and it'll change all the lights in all the other directions to red, and they'll be able to get people to where they need to go faster. Justice Heights Street is being extended as well. I think I got an update from Shannon last week, and she said that that's currently in review and should get started once the construction drawings are approved. Apex Peakway, the north side of it from Center Street to Old Raleigh Road, is planned to be widened from a 2 to 4 lane road to handle congestion. And Pristine Water Drive, we're planning a connector from the actual Pristine Water Drive to Lufkin Road so that we can get traffic in and out of there more easily as well. Water Resources is working on a sanitary sewer and stormwater system condition assessment. Basically, this is hiring somebody to go out and make sure that all the pipes are in good working order, there's no clogs or breaks or other problems, and where there are, to work on financing getting those repaired. And then they're also planning on the new 1.5 million gallon water tower at Pleasant Park, which will be a big help as far as getting water out to people and making sure we have that capacity. One of the biggest things that changed this year was actually that FEMA told us to take all the stuff that we already do and we have been doing for a long time and take it out of our action plan. They said, look, this is no longer something that you're using to develop capability. This is now something that you have been doing for a long time, so it needs to be in your capability assessment. Your action plan needs to be new things that you're working on to mitigate, but not necessarily things that you've been doing for a long time. So we actually took all of the things that we do on a regular basis and we pulled them out of the action plan. So it looks a little smaller than it used to. But we put them in our capability assessment, and I wanted to let you all know that Wake County has ranked very high in general, and the town of Apex in particular, on these assessments. Just to give you some ideas of what came off, this is just a sample, it's not all of them, but we keep the town website updated with information about Sharon Harris. There's tree trimming along all the electric lines to prevent problems with electric outage during storms. We use social media to inform residents about local hazards. There's, during development review, we make sure that new development stays out of the floodplain. We do not want buildings or people getting impacted by floods. And we've been doing that for a very long time. I want to say 20-something years. I think Diane might have brought that one here. And incorporating GIS data into the development review process, just to make sure that we're keeping track of everything the way we should. The full list of all of those things is in your staff report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know that's kind of a lot.
Thank you. Hope you and your loved ones are safe.
Everybody's good. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Shelley?
Okay.
All right. Do you have anybody for the public hearing, Shelley? Okay. So I will open public hearing in case there's anybody who'd like to speak. All right, I will close public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion and possible motion.
Great job. I mean, wrangling that many departments and then multiply by what, 11 municipalities in Wake County?
Thankfully, I just had to do the town.
Well, of course, still.
Everybody else.
Well then, working with a consultant that has to,
Well, thank you.
lots of work there.
Was that a motion?
That was a motion to approve. I guess I'll just make all the motions tonight, guys. It's a motion to approve the 2024 Wake County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan update as presented.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. Just need one more. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Can I make a weird request? I want to add, can I come back and make a public forum comment at the end about something you said tonight? It's not bad. I promise. I'm not going to be mad. Would it be okay if I just took like 2 minutes? Because I couldn't do it at the public forum side because you didn't implement your new rules for tonight yet. So I'd love just to give a little.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's real unusual, guys. I appreciate it. I normally would have signed up under public forum, but Jeff Roach with Peak Engineering Design again. But because you hadn't implemented your 3-minute rule tonight, I didn't want to jump in front of you and say, just to make sure we have our points straightforward. So These, of course, are your meetings. You're the chair. Nobody argues that with you. But I do want to make sure that everybody up here understands that when you start putting the developer and saying that from an equality standpoint, the developer should be treated like any neighbor next door, I think we have to be very careful restricting the development community from providing more than 3 minutes, because some of these larger projects, we cannot stand up here for 3 minutes and even scratch the surface of some of these projects. So tonight was very easy. It was a very small project. I just want to make sure that everybody up here understands these developers are bringing millions of dollars to Apex, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial development. I get it if they're repeating themselves, push them along, but give them the latitude. We should have the latitude to stand up here and make a case why our project meets the town's goals, whether it's an ordinance, whether it's a master plan, whether it's something that council has told us. We just want to make sure that we are heard. Our clients expect the engineer or the attorney to stand up here and give you guys as much information as you need. And a lot of times we just can't do that in 3 minutes. So with that, I understand it's your meeting, and I don't need feedback. I just want to make sure.
Happy
Okay.
to give feedback. Mr. Rich, appreciate your comments. You absolutely could have signed up, and we, just for awareness for everyone, he is signed up, but we actually could have taken that during the public forum section. The 3 minutes, it will be just like it will be just like the community. It will be 3 minutes. You bring in additional folks, which oftentimes developers do. We'll have 9 minutes. In my experience and sitting on this board, typically I think 3 to 9 minutes is absolutely going to cover it. Now, as in this moment, I absolutely have sat in this chair and offered additional feedback coming up, answer questions.
Mhm.
I do not, I want to be clear, do not want to limit information flow and conversation amongst the board. That is not the intent. The intent purely is to prevent duplication, to streamline that effort, and to make sure what needs to be highlighted is highlighted.
Mhm.
I am here to say if we need to give it a joyful funeral because it doesn't work in a couple of months, I am happy to do that. But for the moment, I think it will work. Will it force our developer friends to be a little more focused in giving their comments? Absolutely. Will it allow for space for our developer friends to bring their colleagues up, as they often do, so that they can have more time? Absolutely. Again, not trying to limit conversation, but trying to streamline. I appreciate your feedback.
Yep.
And we'll work with it. If we're up here and we're at 5 minutes, or we're at 3 minutes and someone is just, hasn't quite dug in yet and we're still have questions, we're going to be open to that. But the intent is absolutely to prevent the duplication, which I often see happen.
Right. And I appreciate the time. That's all I
Appreciate
want to
that.
say. Just make sure the flow of information goes back and forth, that you guys are making a fully informed decision. But
That
I
is
appreciate
absolutely
letting me come a little out of order. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. With that, possible motion. Oh, you did make the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor, or I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you all. Oh, Sarah.
Preston, how are you doing? Ready for fall?
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, yes, very much so.